This is an interview with Willie Osborne for the Birmingham Civil Rights Institute's Oral History Project by Benny Miles at Miles College, November 17, 1995 at 1 p.m. How are you, Willie?
I'm fine today.
Good.
How are you?
I'm doing good.
Great.
Willie, where'd you grow up, or where were you born in Alabama?
I was born in a place called Lipscomb, Alabama at that time. It was really New Hill on June 9, 1946.
Okay. New Hill?
New Hill. That's to the left of Lipscomb on the old South Bessemer Highway, like you're going to Bessemer.
Okay.
And at that time, in 1946, the late 40s and early 50s, it was unincorporated, and you went by the closest city to you. So it was the town of Lipscomb then, not the city of Lipscomb, the town of Lipscomb. And of course, I was in the father's outpost, I suppose, but I was born in Lipscomb.
Okay. Do you have any brothers and sisters?
I have 2 brothers, no sisters. I had 3 brothers. One died at the age of 12. He had a water head and he never walked. He was paralyzed.
Okay, okay. And the other?
I have a brother older than myself and a brother younger than myself.
So they all were born in Lipscomb too?
Well, John was born in Paul Hill and Bob was born in Brewerfield, but all of that is considered Lipscomb, okay.
Okay, I think you said whoever was in charge at that time, that's why they named it
Lipscomb
or whatever name.
But you see, you was under everybody's police jurisdiction since you were darker than amber, so.
Oh,
yes.
Darker than amber, that means black. Huh?
Of course.
Okay. What about your parents? Were they from that area too? Or
No, my dad was from Hale County and my mom was from Montgomery County. Mm-hmm. My grandmom was in the second graduating class from Alabama State University. Well, it was college at that time, and my mom was a school teacher.
Okay. So you came from, during that day, a really educated family.
Of course, we had the only television and telephone and radio in the little community. And it was a party line at that, but we had that.
Okay, let's talk about that a little bit. Were you considered, your family, were they considered rich because you had a television and telephone and radio?
Well, I don't think you could quite call it rich because my father was an ore miner and my mom was a school teacher. Now, we did okay, but we wasn't by no means rich in the terms of rich, but we was okay in the community. We had pretty good standing, but wasn't really rich.
You said you had a telephone and you had a party line. What was that? What is a party line?
A party line was when you first started getting telephones back in the 50s. You had 6 or 7 or 8 people on the line, and what it is, you would have a long ring, and the next person would have one short ring, and another person would have 2 short rings, and another person would have 2 long rings. So when it rings, you have to get the rings right to know who they want to talk to.
Did you ever pick up on the wrong ring?
Of course.
Deliberately or by mistake, as a kid?
As a kid, deliberately, of course. You wanted to know who was talking to who.
Mm-hmm. Let's talk about the movement and your parents. During that time, were they involved at all with
Well, my parents, my daddy died in 1950. He was in an ore mine, and ore fell on him, and he got killed in the mine. My brother, Holland Brown, that's the one that died at 12 in 1956 because he was born in 1944. He was 2 years older than me. And after he died, 1 year later, my mom died. But I was reared by my grandmom then, her mom, because my baby brother was given to my grandma because she was a school teacher and kept me for the baby because I was big enough to take care of myself, and she had Holland. But my grandmother, now she was the movement person. She said, come a day and a time that you're not going to have to listen, that no one tell you what to do unless you're uneducated. And education was her strongest suit. She stressed that.
What do you remember about her involvement? Do you remember any meetings or her going anywhere or people coming to the house?
Well, listen, she was the founder of the Brewerfield Prayer Band. we kids had to pray. Every Monday we meet and pray. And when Martin Luther King and the woman in Montgomery that didn't, Rosa Parks.
Rosa Parks, yes.
And Rosa Parks, I guess my grandmama would have been 10 or 12 years older than her, but she was from Montgomery also. And when she refused the seat, my grandmom turned her attention from the Bible. She taught the Bible and all, but she turned her attention to the movement. And her boys was pretty good figures in the movement because we played sports and ran track.
Did you get an opportunity to meet Mrs. Parks during that time?
No, I never met Mrs. Parks. I met Martin Luther King.
When did you meet him, and what was that like?
I met him in '63, I think. '63 and '62. And we went to Selma for the first march across the Pettis Bridge. We got beat pretty good that day. But I saw him there. I didn't personally shake his hand.
Okay.
But I was just in the crowd with him that day.
What about your grandmother? When you said she got involved in the movement, she used to read the Bible a lot, and certainly the Bible was something that was needed along with the movement. But
well, you know, Martin implied that it's nonviolent and peaceful. And that was, to her way of thinking, the right way to do things. Because force at that time would only lead to their sons getting beat up and killed. Force would. And since Martin came with a nonviolent, peaceful movement, she was 100% behind that. And the people of Brewerfield and the community we were in, while we went to the prayer meeting, she said, okay, we also going to learn how to look out for ourselves and pray and march for our rights.
Were you scared during that time?
You better believe we were scared. But I was a pretty fast runner also. But you know, those sticks, they had bats at that time, they had bats look like the size of baseball bats. And they beat you, they sick dogs on you, they turned hose pipes on you. So was I scared? Yes, I was scared.
Well, what about your brothers?
Well, my brother Bob, and Bob is 2 years younger than me. Wherever his big brother Bill went, he was going. So, you know, he always tagged along, and I'm not too good a singer. He's a pretty good singer and clap his hand, but he could run pretty good, so.
What did you think about it during then? You said you were scared, of course, but did you think that it would ever end, or that you all would just stop doing it and somebody else would take over, or things would get better or worse? I didn't think
it would ever end, because it was time for a change at that time. And me growing up to be a young black man really had no opportunities. I could go to historical black schools, but I was always looked upon as second class. I couldn't buy food and walk in a restaurant and buy it. I would have to go to the back door, not knowing where the food came from. I've been on the bus, sitting about midway in the bus, the Birmingham Transit. The white driver get up and move the little board that's a white in color 3 seats back, and only 5 whites on that, and they have 10 seats, and I have to get up and walk to the back and stand up. Or nigga, get off the bus, one of the two.
So you've been called, during that time you were called names?
Oh, that's the password for the Negro. They couldn't say Negro.
How did that make you feel?
Well, to tell you the truth, I didn't feel good about it at all. But in that day and time, this was the deal of the day. So you had to live with it, absorb it, and move on.
When you rode the bus, and you said they moved the card that would say what color?
Not a card. It was a board.
A board
that had the holes was in the seats, especially made to set it in. It had 2 little prongs on it, and you pick it up and sit it back or sit it up.
And the bus said Negroes or coloreds to the back of the bus, or stand behind this line.
Stand behind the line. That's right.
So the day that you went, you were on the bus, do you remember about what age you were when you were on?
I was about anywhere from 12. I was born in 46, so This is up through 63 and 64, so I could have been anywhere from 12 to 17, and it was that way.
And when you were, when they moved the board, you knew then that you had to move.
Of course. Of course. If you didn't know, they'll tell you. They'll teach you. They'll show you. Next stop, some police will get on and pull you off and beat you or something. Yeah, they'll show you.
Speaking of beatings, do you recall any particular incidents during that time, or were you
During
ever
the civil
beat?
rights
Yeah,
time?
or were you ever beat, or were you ever locked up?
Hey, listen, not only me, women and all in the crowd, you know, you singing peaceful. Bull Connor right around this, Eugene Bull Connor, the police come right around this little white tank. They had the fire department out there to hose you down. And police with dogs and sticks that long, and they just beat anybody.
So you were one of the persons who'd been beaten before?
Oh, well, I might have got hit once or twice, but I didn't stay around that long to just take no beating and stand there. No.
So because you didn't stay around, did you leave? So as you said, you know, you were afraid, but you didn't want to be beat, or when the more trouble started happening, you just left? Give us a scenario.
Well,
Tell me what
listen,
happened.
When the trouble and the beating started, everyone would run one way or another. You know, no one really gonna stand there and unless you get hit in the head and knocked down or something.
Sure.
But when the beating started with those sticks, everyone leaves. You know, you're peacefully marching, saying that's to overcome. But when the beating starts, you just run to another area. You know, you just run. After a while, they'll get tired, and, and then you just continue to sing. Or you go to Newberry's and order something to eat and sit down at the counter. When you get tired of running, you go sit down at the counter and you go into jail. They just load you up in the van and like sardines and put you in the van. You just go into jail. They take you either to Lawson Field out there, because all the jails were either Lawson Field or 5 Points West over here, and just let you out in a big old fence. Once the main dormitory got filled, they just let you out there and rain on you, whatever.
And you said in a fenced area?
In a fenced area, yes.
Where they kept people there, or just for a while, or?
Well, you supposedly been in jail, but they had nowhere to put you. You understand? So.
So it's like cattle in a.
That's right, cows, sheep, goats, you know, men, women, everybody's out there, and it's usually the younger men, because the older fellas at that time, you know, I think they was docile, and they said, well, I can't do this, I'm scared, I'm gonna get killed or something like that. It was usually the younger crowd of us, about 17, 18, 19, and 20. And they call us radicals, the police gonna kill you, and they Uncle Tom or something, oh, I'm not gonna do that, I'm scared. But, you know, it's just time for change.
Did people who they locked up in those fenced areas, were they supposed to stay there for hours or stay there overnight?
They were supposed to stay overnight, and they had a committee of people to come around and post bond for you.
Okay.
That is, if they could keep you locked up in a confined area. You know, like some people, or mostly women that couldn't run fast, they kept them locked up in a confined area. And some men, just like they get the beating and they beat them down and they couldn't move or injured or something, they just throw them in there and lock them up. And sooner or later, this committee kind of goes, there was a lot of people on that committee would come around and post bond for them, and they go home, but the next day they're right back.
Did you see many people that they corralled together in those gates? Did you see many people beat?
Yes, and I saw a lot of people pray. A lot of them prayed. A lot of them got beat. I've seen the dog run people and bite them. Yes, I saw all of that. But
what about for you? You said you didn't stick around. How did you get away?
Well, I was pretty fast. I ran track.
Okay.
I was a high jumper.
So you jumped the fence?
Yes. You know, by the time you put me there, here I go, boom. And my brother was pretty good, too. It was about 15 of us from Winona. We went to Winona High School, and we played ball. And, you know, it was just fun to us, you know. Outrun them every day anyway, playing football. So.
You said it was fun to you. You didn't realize at the time, perhaps, the seriousness
of it. Well, no, we were
it,
practical. We were practical now, because leaving school, the teachers, they would tell you should stay at school, because in that day and time, it was their job. And they would tell you should stay at school. But if you left, they wouldn't say nothing. You do understand. They knew what it was. They're going to tell you, you shouldn't go because the system says you're supposed to stay at school. But the system was wrong at that time. And it's still wrong today.
You said the system is still wrong today.
Yes.
When you look at the system then, talk about how it was then and what you thought of it then,
Well,
and what you think of it today.
Okay. The system then was you had no place to sit. It wasn't subtle. It was aggressive. You're black, you're nigger, you're subhuman. You have no place in society unless you learn a skill, a brick masonry, carpentry, cement finisher. Those are Negro jobs. Working in mines, steel mill, those were Negro jobs. You wasn't looked for to be an accountant, not a doctor, not a lawyer. Those were white men jobs. And you are second class. You don't have a right to vote. You had to pay a poll tax when I first registered to vote. You had to take a test.
Do you remember anything about the test?
Yes, I remember about, and only so many passed in one day. No matter if you answered all of the questions right. They reached their quota of niggers to pass today, and no one else passed.
What were some of the questions that was on that test? As you
Constitution of the United States.
What about the Constitution? What did it say?
How many votes it need to make a majority, to take a majority in a quorum, things like that. Things that a black wouldn't quite be aware of back in those days unless you really studied. You know, how many constitutional amendments are there? I asked you something about the 14th Amendment or the 7th. Who introduced this amendment? Oh, crazy questions.
So that if you didn't pass, got all of them right.
If you didn't get all of them right, you didn't pass. If you got all of them right, they are grading them, and they have their quota right before you. You still didn't pass.
Did you took the test?
Yes.
And how many times did it take you before you?
4 times, and I was an A student.
4, and you had to pay.
Yeah, of course. I didn't forget how much the poll tax was at that time, but it was pretty good for the amount of money you made.
Were you a member of any other organizations in your community during that time?
Oh, well, I was always a member of NAACP. I've been a member. My grandmother and grandfather was a member of that. Been a long time, and I think they had a little group called CORE.
Yeah.
That a few of us may or may not have been Congress of Racial Equality. Then SNCC was there, but you know, you had an opportunity to be a member of any or all of them by your color, if you wanted to be, and you didn't go to jail for felonies or things like that. Now, going to jail for civil rights didn't count, you know, because all of us went to jail for that.
Well, why did you get involved in the civil rights movement?
Well, I was a up-and-coming young black man that never went to jail, was a straight A student at Winona. My mom was a school teacher. My grandmom had been graduated from college. And the way of life in our house is you must have a degree.
So you didn't take it, you just knew you didn't bulk your parents, well, whoever was in charge of the
I
thing, you
have
just
to
knew.
listen to my parents. You must have a degree. See, back in those days, it wasn't no such thing as child abuse.
Okay.
You either get an A, a B, you didn't bring no C's, or you meet the ironing card. One of the two. You had it, and you never got too grown to meet the ironing card. Because if you can't meet that, you can meet the 3220, I believe that's what the name of the weapon was back in those days. And you know, you just got your lesson, you did as you were told.
Well, do you think there's a big difference in youngsters then and now since you brought up
Well,
the
you see, you don't have any discipline now. When you take discipline out of the home and don't discipline your child, you just want someone else to kill your child for you.
So that's,
you know,
that's
what that is. Now, you see, if you have that child and you don't raise that child to be a productive citizen, the police can only do one or two things, either incarcerate him or kill him. And if you train him while he's young. He'll be all
Yeah.
right when he get older.
When you talk about incarceration and killing, during those times, did you ever see the police kill somebody?
You not only kill, they only need an excuse. Take, for instance, a young white couple.
Okay.
The white guy keep his girl out too long and don't get her home on time. The first place he's gonna drop the girl is over by a colored area. And the first colored guy walking down the street, just left home, walking down the street, she look up and cry rape. Do you know they'll nearly about beat that man to death? It don't have to be the truth. Just because he got up a little too early going to work and she was there.
When you got involved with the organization and the movement, did you play a particular role? Were you an officer? I mean, being a marcher and participating is a lot within itself, but did you do anything else?
Well, when I got involved with the role, I always have been politically inclined. The first thing I learned how to do was help people learn how to read to register to vote.
Oh, that had to be a big task.
That was a pretty good, because when they see a black guy coming to get other blacks to register them to vote, they would not do anything to you. Beating was easy, but I mean, if you really got very involved and they found out where you live, house bombing was everything was in place.
Just common, huh?
Everything was commonplace in those times. Dying was the easiest thing to do at that time. Living was what was hard at that time.
When you said that living was hard, did you ever say to yourself, why did I get involved in this?
Well, if you didn't, it's just as hard. You can sit back and do nothing, and nothing will happen. Or you can set up and try to do something and change the system, and eventually it would change.
Do you attend any meetings today? Are you involved with any organizations locally?
Yes, I'm the
today?
treasurer of Jefferson County Political Democratic Council. I'm the treasurer for that organization.
And what are some of the things that you do in that organization, or the organization as relates to the movement?
Well, number one, I'm responsible for all monies that we raise. I'm also the co-chair of the political PAC, also the co-chair of Get Out the Vote Committee. I was Paul Hubbard's campaign coordinator for Jefferson County in the last election.
So you know
I
a
was
lot.
Don Siegelman's campaign coordinator for Jefferson County, and we won. Warren Minifield, who's here, I helped him, and he won. And I also was the campaign manager for Ernest Johnson, and he won. We did a lot of things. We have constables running next year. We have a United States Senator running next year, and all the congressional offices run next year.
Do you think something is missing today, or you think things are getting better? Can you see the?
They're not getting any better.
Why would you say that?
Well, today you have a systematic form of segregation today, where it was avoiding obtrusive in that day is secretive today. You have a Republican society today that want either one of two classes, either very rich or very poor.
There's no in between anymore, huh?
And it's no in between. The middle class is no more. Debt has made the middle class diminish. Look at what's happening today. They want to balance the budget on the back of Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security. The people that can least afford it balance the budget and give all the savings to the rich. Now, what cockamamie idea is that? You tell me. Person worked 65 years and retired. All these years he paid Social Security. Where's the money? They didn't give it to, a lot of people didn't die. Where's the money? They didn't give it to nobody. So what happened to it?
Yeah.
Yeah, what happened to it? Let them tell me. You know, I'm not in Congress. I don't know. So what happened?
So when you look at that, and when you look at the movement, do you think there's a need for organizations like the SCLC and
Listen, there is a need for organization for minorities from the grassroots level to White House level.
Mm-hmm.
There's a need for a fundraising organization to get the kind of representatives that will represent the people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, okay.
That will represent the people.
Yeah.
Instead of representing special interests. Mm-hmm. Special interests give so many congressmen and senators X amount of thousands of dollars.
So that the movement could work with that.
The movement could come up with appropriate people, enough appropriate, one or two won't be enough appropriate people to bring out a block of people that don't adhere to the public request and put in their own set of people. You can say what you want about Ross Perot, but he have a very good idea about straightening out America. Get his own people and put them in place that will look out for the people instead of special interests.
So you are involved in or SCLC or one of those organizations,
yes.
and you attend meetings on a regular basis?
Yes, we meet once a month every Tuesday, 6 o'clock at the Masonic Temple.
How would you describe, let's say, a typical meeting?
Our typical meetings start with prayer by the chaplain, and then it's turned over in the hands of the president, and we discuss new business and old business, and then we seek new members and then new ideas on what happened in the community, and we talk about the schools, how we can address letters to the mayor or to the council to discuss the schools and discuss the society, and how we can better serve the community through road repair and things of that nature. We address most things of political nature.
When you were involved in the movement, were police present when you all had meetings? When you attended any meetings, was there any police presence around, or wonder, well, what are they doing or what are they planning?
Listen, it was the old blue law that if it's more than 15 blacks congregating, you break it up. That was the law of thumb in them days. If it's more than, maybe it's 10, but if it's more than 10 or 15 together, you break that up, because that's a mob. That was their mentality at that day and time.
So what did you do? Did you have just fewer people at a meeting, or you went on?
What you did, you had a meeting out of their presence. You could always, it's 9 or 10 or 15 places you could always go to have a meeting. Some people say they have mass meeting at church, but you had little splinter groups that met and did a lot of work, street work and organization work in little small splinter groups, 5 or 10 or 15. And you all would report back to a main body on a given date, a given time, as to what your activities has been, what you achieve and what you haven't achieved.
How would you, the community where you lived in Lipscomb at that time, how would you describe your community, like the racial makeup, the occupations or organizations in the area of recreation?
Okay, back in those days, you had all blacks living in one part and all whites living in another part. Blacks didn't really intermingle with whites in those days. But in the part where all blacks lived, you had some coal miners, some ore miners. You had the gambit. You had school teachers. You had preachers. You had people that worked for Birmingham City and Bessemer City. All of that was in one little tangle. And the housing would really distinct between the two, how good their house or how bad. That really would segregate who was what, really.
What about that? What do you mean when you say
well, the old
houses?
preacher, he have a fairly nice old house and plenty of chickens and things around it.
And his yard, chickens in his yard?
Chicken
Oh, really?
and the hogs and, had some cows, a couple of horses. Oh, yeah, I told you it's unincorporated, but, You have all that back in those days, and you have a garden or two, and somebody's horse eat up your corn or something. But you fenced it out. But it was back in those days. It was just a little community.
And so that's how we knew people had quite a bit if they had that, and then the other ones didn't.
And then some. You always have had the poor. You always have someone a little bit poorer than you. But one thing about that, nobody was ever hungry. And nobody had to lock any doors.
More togetherness.
More together, and you fed everybody. You knew he was the drunk. You knew he gonna drink whiskey. You knew that. And you knew every Friday, Saturday, he gonna pass by your house cursing, and you expected that. The days he didn't do it, something was wrong. So you go by to see if he's sick. That's the way the community. And then you had the preacher. The drunk look up and see the preacher coming, and he straightened up.
So respect too.
Everybody respected everybody. And and then there was always 2 or 3 fast movers there, and he talking, you watch your money. So everybody knew everybody in the community. So,
what about your household? Did you all have chickens or
we had chickens.
Cows or whatever?
We had chickens. We had 2 cows and 2 mules, 1 horse, and heck, I don't know. My brother fed the hogs all the time. I stayed so busy digging up the field, but I think we had 2 or 3 hogs, but we did all right.
So you think that helped kids better during that time than today because they had more things to do?
Everybody had a chore. You didn't have all playtime. Everybody had something to do. And when you get out of school, you got your chores first, and then you got your lessons.
Okay. What about benefits in terms of the movement? What benefits would you say that you or your family or even the community realized as a result of
the movement?
Yeah.
Well, number 1, they can sit anywhere they want on public transportation. Number 2, they have the right to complain about city government. Now, they never did have that right before. Number 3, they can go vote if they get up and go vote, which they don't do. We struggled so hard for them. They became dissatisfied with the system.
Do you think
Blacks would rather talk, but they don't vote. They'll talk about how bad things are, but they won't get up to go change it. I don't really like this person in office or that person, but they won't get up and go change. You can call them and bring a van to their house. They'll find some excuse not to go. My feet hurt today. My back hurt today. They will find some excuse not to. I know. I'm out there all the time.
What do you think will happen or will have to happen to change things? Or do you think things will stay the same as it relates to what you were just talking about?
Well, listen, what will have to happen is another young person movement here. Young people are the people that don't register to vote. They don't care to vote. The system is fine with them, it seems. When we had Dr. King marching, and we marched as young people during my time, 25 years ago, 30 years ago. That movement, we got all of the older people. You would see an old man, 75 years old, went down and took the test to learn how to vote. He would get his 70-year-old wife, and they would walk to the poll and vote.
Yeah.
Because they wanted a change. Now you have households with children having children. And 25 is the oldest in the house. And she got 6 or 7 kids. But once they've never voted, never thought about voting. The first thing they said, it's going to be the same way. If I go vote, we're going to have the same thing. Voter animosity. No one wants to vote. Everyone wants a free ride.
So
I haven't the solution. Only thing I can do is talk and call and ask. But I can't beat it into their heads. And they're raised today where disobedience is the standard. not the exception. Not voting is the standard, not the exception.
What about church during that time? What were you a member of a church then?
Of course. I've been a member of St. Mark AME Church in Brighton since 1957, 30-some years.
Was your church active in the movement?
Yeah, my church was pretty active. We had a lot of young people in Brighton, yeah.
Your pastor?
Yeah,
too,
he was pastor. The pastor, he had his status to maintain, but he would tell you in the pulpit, it's time for you to go and see can you do better for your children right now.
Okay.
And we did that.
Right before we close, if you were in control of the movement and you could go back and change some things, what would you change, or would you change something?
If I was in control of the movement, what would I change if I wanted to change something? I would change the perception of how my people look at voting. If I were in control of the movement, I would probably express with an emphasis on voting for change through the legal system.
Okay.
And I would have more of my people active on voting day. I don't care if you're Republican or Democrat or whatever you prefer, but go vote. And sooner or later, if you vote in mass and enough, I don't ever say no one vote a straight ticket, because I'm not a straight ticket voter myself.
Okay.
I believe in the best candidate for the job. I know that's different from a lot of Democrats, but I believe in the best candidate for the job. And if you get enough people voting for the best people, you'll have good government.
What is your assessment of the Birmingham movement? Like, how successful is it? What were its accomplishments? And even, what would you say about its failures?
The Birmingham movement
Your assessment.
at that time, in '63, the Birmingham movement was a good movement because we had racial strife everywhere. 20 years down the road, it doesn't seem like such a good thing today. Because look at education in Birmingham. We have the lowest education system in the United States, I believe. No one anyone that doesn't educate its young can ever be progressive in anything.
Okay.
You must have education, and you must pass the baton to a younger generation if you are to succeed. Now, I have a daughter and a son, and when I'm 55, I'm going to pass the baton because they'll be educated enough and smart enough. And young will make mistakes. But if you give them a good foundation and a good education, you must learn. I had to learn from my mistakes. So did you. And they're going to make mistakes.
Sure.
Let's hope they're not big ones.
Do you have any items related to the movement or to the development of Birmingham that you'd like to donate to the Institute, or did you keep anything during that time?
I'll have to go home and look in my storage house out there. I know I have 3 or 4, 5 things that I took from something. Well, let's say I relieved off some office or something. Let's say it like
During that time that you kept all these years?
Yes,
Really?
and I told him it was doing that out there somewhere. I probably haven't saw him in 20 years. I probably have to ask my son. He'll probably help me dig them out.
Okay.
We'll see if we can find something.
Okay.
You know, I took some from Bull Connor's little tank or something back there.
Did you?
Oh, yes, I did.
What did you think of Bull Connor?
Nothing. just a no good evil white man.
That's how you viewed him.
Yeah, that's how. Not only him, Art Haynes and all of them like that. I really didn't think of anybody that's gonna call me a nigger. I don't really think much of anybody today. That's all they can view me as that.
Do you ever run across any of those people back then, the white people then that have
Yeah.
gotten older that you've seen today?
George Wallace is a good example. I've seen George Wallace before he was shot in '72. That was the most evil racial white man it was. And '56 stood in the door down there in Tuscaloosa.
Yeah.
Segregation now, segregation forever. I mean, looked at him.
Okay.
And today now, I think he said he want to be a Republican.
Yeah.
You know. But not only that, look at George Wallace Jr. If it was ingrained in daddy, he ingrained in son.
Okay.
If a child is 5 years or younger, you can put them all together. They won't know anything. You can ask them what bigotry means or whatever. They don't know. But let him turn 7 and watch it. Okay. I can't play with you no more. You're a nigger.
Because they're taught that, huh?
That's right.
Anything I didn't ask you that you want to share with us before we leave? Okay.
Well, no, I think we got it all.
All right.
I'm just happy to be here, and thank you for interviewing.
And we certainly thank you for joining us.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Well,